commentator is addressing all aspects related to the Chicago American football team, emphasizing the concerns expressed by fans. In a section dedicated to questions, one fan asked whether it would be feasible for the team to accept a trade proposal involving moving down in the draft, considering it would only be 2 spots. The response indicates that, while it's a minor change, the 12th overall pick brings uncertainty about who might be available. The commentator suggests that, when managing the team, a trade to move down 2 spots should at least include a 3rd-round pick if there's interest in a specific player. They also note that this could signal a lower evaluation of that particular athlete, but understand that accepting 4th and 6th round picks wouldn't be a good strategy. Another fan presented an ideal scenario where 2 desired players would be on the roster, which would undoubtedly be exciting. However, the analysis highlights that the only way this could happen would be through a trade involving another player on the team, possibly during the draft. For example, if the team selects a relevant athlete with the 10th pick and receives offers for another player in the later days of the draft, they could give up a pick to address another team need. While the commentator believes the team should keep the mentioned player along with the draft pick, the possibility of movement is considered interesting. A question was raised about which available quarterbacks in the market could contribute to Caleb's development. In my opinion, the team already has competent coaches for this task, so bringing in someone to assist him isn't urgent. However, if we consider the relevance of a more experienced presence, it could be beneficial to have someone who doesn't pose a threat to the starting position. While I recognize options may be scarce, an athlete like Joe Flacco or Case Keenum could be interesting choices. If Teddy Bridgewater decides to continue playing this year, I'm not sure if he'll return to coaching his high school team after winning the state championship last year. Having a player with that level of experience, who has participated in a significant number of games but isn't competing for the starting job, could be very useful. There's no shortage of options for this position, but consider an athlete like Joe Flacco or Case Keenum. If Teddy Bridgewater opts to play this year, I don't know if he'll return to coaching his high school team after last year's state championship win. The presence of someone with that kind of experience, who isn't currently a starter, could bring valuable insight to the locker room. I consider signing someone like that. In terms of performance, I believe Begint is fully capable of serving as a backup. He has the necessary skills for the role. However, if there's a demand for an experienced voice, a player with that profile could undoubtedly fill that need. Moving on to the next question, how far would someone be willing to move down in the draft? This really depends on the offers that come in. Personally, I consider trading down into the early 20s if it included a future 1st-round pick. In a previous simulation, I moved from 10th to 21st, gaining a 4th-round pick this year and a 1st-rounder next year. That involves dropping several spots, but if it's possible to secure a 1st-round pick in next year's draft, which many believe will be stronger than this year's, that makes the conversation quite interesting. However, everything depends on who's available at the 10th pick. If there's a truly high-level prospect, teams have their own draft boards and evaluate how many exceptional players are available. If one of them is there at 10, I think it's essential to pick that player. Otherwise, it's worth considering moving down and seeing what offers arise, but it ultimately depends on the proposals and the athletes available. Shifting topics, could a team consider signing a certain linebacker? A defensive coordinator had a previous connection with him when he was drafted in 2011. It's something that often goes unnoticed, but this defensive coordinator spent a year or 2 with the organization around 2011 or maybe 2012, though I believe it was just 2011. Later, he became a head coach for another team, but this player was drafted while he was still the defensive coordinator, so it makes sense that he contributed to that decision. Without a doubt, this athlete has exceptional talent, though he's now 36 and has faced some injuries. He had a decent comeback season last year after missing most of 2023, finishing with 6 sacks. If someone had told me he'd play in 12 or more games, that would be very encouraging. It's undeniable that Von Miller is a talented athlete at this stage, even though he's 36 and injuries have become a recent concern. I think he performed reasonably well last season after a complicated 2023, where he was sidelined for a long time. If you told me he'd play in over 12 games and get between 5 and 7 sacks as a rotational pass rusher, I definitely support that idea. At this stage of his career, he won't be as effective against the run, as he doesn't have the ideal size to play as an edge in a 4-3 defense. However, for 1 year and $4 million, it'd be great if he could deliver half a dozen sacks. He clearly wants to keep playing. I'm in favor of this possibility, but I don't know if the team and he would be willing. As a rotational pass rusher who can play on third downs and pressure the quarterback, I'd support signing him. If the team decides to bring him in, it'll become one of today's main topics, and I'd like you to share your opinion during this segment, whether it's S for sign or P for pass. Now, Brick just got home after driving 250 miles. What do you think of the new addition? I haven't heard about him. I mentioned this during the discussion, and it depends on when you watch this video, live on Monday or later in the week. He's referring to Nick Mloud, who I believe is an option to replace Jalen Jones, a versatile DB who'll contribute mainly on special teams, but can also play safety, which is important given some depth concerns at the position. He can play both inside and outside cornerback, with over 1,100 career snaps on special teams, so he'll primarily work in that area and help in the defensive backfield when needed. There's considerable expectation about the possibility of drafting a linebacker. What do you think about that? It's essential to have a linebacker, as there's Tremaine Edmonds, TJ Edwards, and special teams players who haven't stood out yet. So, they need to find a linebacker to replace Jack Sanborn. We've talked about EJ Speed before. He could be an option. There are also players available on the second and third days of the draft who could fill that Sam linebacker role. Teams urgently need to address the linebacker position, especially after Jack Sanborn's departure. We've discussed EJ Speed as a viable option, and he really could be a name to consider. Additionally, several options are available in the later days of the draft to fill that gap. Clearly, another player in this position is indispensable. On the other hand, regarding Grady Jarrett, there's debate over whether he's more effective as a pass rusher or a run defender at this stage of his career. Personally, I believe he excels more as a pass rusher. While his sack numbers might not be impressive, his real value lies in his ability to generate pocket pressure. Coaches often emphasize the importance of making quarterbacks uncomfortable, and Jarrett stands out in that regard. His impact goes beyond sack numbers. He can disrupt plays through tackles, pressures, and forcing quarterbacks to adjust. He's also solid against the run, and I'd say he's among the best at his position. When it comes to financial management, it's essential to control spending. For many parents, daycare expenses can be high, making financial planning crucial. It's important to know how much your family can spend and whether a trip is feasible this year. Tracking finances is where management tools come in. They're useful for monitoring expenses and managing subscriptions efficiently. Many people are surprised to find they're spending significantly more on subscriptions than they thought, while the average American believes they spend about. Fortunately, by using financial management tools, many have discovered forgotten subscriptions, leading to savings. For example, after marriage, it's easy to forget to cancel duplicate streaming services. This kind of oversight is common, and staying organized is key. I reviewed my subscriptions and realized I'd forgotten about several. I even found cases where I'd signed up for the same service twice. When my partner and I got married, we decided to cancel some streaming services but forgot. So, there were quite a few subscriptions. These tools can help you identify all of that. You might have signed up for a trial that's now a monthly charge and wonder, I don't spend that much. Well, test it. Download the app, link your bank account, and see how much you're really spending each month and where you could save. There's a discussion about drafting both running backs from Ohio State University. This was addressed, but the question arises about trading a certain player. What could you get in return for him? Let me ask, would you rather trade this player for a 5th or 6th round pick and then draft another running back? Imagine you pick one of your options between 39 and 41 and another at 72. Would you prefer to do that and get a late day 3 pick, or would you rather keep the player and draft just one running back, whether at the 10th pick in the 2nd round or the 3rd? Personally, I'd lean toward keeping him. While he's not perfect, he's on a reasonable salary, is effective in open space, and contributes to a good running back mix. I think he can still be valuable. Consider drafting a new running back to join him. If you decide to move on from him after this season, it'll be much easier. You could release or trade him, saving money in the future, and then have the opportunity to draft another running back next year. That's basically the approach I'm taking. Think about selecting a complementary player, and if you decide to move on from this player after the season, the transition becomes much simpler. You could release or trade him, resulting in significant savings, and then draft another running back next year. That's the direction I'm following. I don't think the team is in a position to invest too high picks in the running back position this year, but they'll certainly use one. A player who could be a surprise in the draft and fit well with the team is someone I've mentioned before, an athlete from the University of Nebraska. He has great athletic potential and, being an older player, might fall to the 4th or 5th round. He's an interesting prospect. I'm also evaluating some tight ends I consider good for day 3 of the draft. Recently, I spoke with a player at a major conference event. He stands out as an excellent blocker and could be a pleasant surprise, possibly an attractive late 6th round pick, providing solid support as a third tight end. These are just a few names to keep in mind. If you're looking for comprehensive offseason coverage, staying updated on the latest player signings and my thoughts, there's a lot to discuss, including interesting rumors and trade speculation. I share my opinions on all of it, and the best part is it's completely free. So, if you're interested in what's happening, be sure to follow along. Regarding a specific player situation, if he isn't drafted, what would the consequences be for another player? Should we consider trading one of them or keeping him? Of course, you don't draft a player early just to bench him. In fact, it increases the team's depth, fostering competition. There'll likely be plenty of rotation, as they're defensive linemen who aren't expected to play most snaps. However, the line would be solid with these players, forming a promising group with significant playing time. The final roles will be determined during preseason and the offseason, which is crucial for competition. The team only won 5 games last year, so while I have confidence in one player, I don't think his presence should affect the overall strategy. Everyone will play important roles, and for the organization, that's exactly the purpose of training and the offseason. There should be intense competition, especially considering the team only won 5 games last year. I have a positive opinion about one athlete, but his presence shouldn't prevent drafting a defensive tackle if they find someone truly impressive. For the offensive line, I draft 2 players. Nobody is against drafting offensive linemen, but we've reached a point where the best available player is key. In my view, one athlete doesn't profile as strongly compared to other options. Plus, he's recovering from a serious knee injury, which raises concerns. If there's intent to trade up for him, that's acceptable, but to me, he's not among this draft's top 10. Picking the 16th best player at 10 isn't ideal. He might turn out to be a top 10 talent, but considering the knee injury, it's a considerable risk. If he hadn't been injured, I'd have felt much more comfortable taking him at 10. But the injury happened, and that's my view. I'm favorable toward another athlete and would consider drafting him at 10. If there's confidence in a player's potential as a left tackle, I'd also be open to selecting him there. However, it's not just about avoiding offensive linemen. It's about being open to multiple positions, as the team has already addressed several needs and has the flexibility to take the best player available, at least in the first round. In that context, I'd be surprised if at least one of their first 4 picks, 10, 39, 41, and 72, didn't include an offensive lineman. Who's your current favorite player on the team? Historically, we remember icons, but who stands out to you now? Let's debate that. Would the team consider trading a player if they drafted another? Not right now, but in a year or 2, that could change. For me, adding this player would strengthen the tight end position, signaling we now have 2 great tight ends. Last year, one team used 12 personnel over 32% of the time, and these 2 players would complement each other well. If you draft this player, you're genuinely improving your tight end group, indicating we have 2 good tight ends. The team's offense used 3 tight ends over 32% of the time, and these 2 would see plenty of playing time together, easing the load for one. So, this player wouldn't be pressured to take on responsibilities others had early on. He could develop more gradually. Thus, I don't think the other athlete would go anywhere if the drafted player stood out as a rookie and, by the end of his first year, became the primary tight end. This year, they'd play side by side. Regarding the possibility of a trade involving a Raiders player in exchange for the 6th pick and a second-rounder, the truth is the Raiders wouldn't accept the 6th pick for that player. I'm not sure if there was a misunderstanding, but a trade involving the 6th and the Raiders' second-round pick, receiving the player and a third-rounder, wouldn't benefit the team. What's really being considered? Would the Raiders get the 10th pick in this scenario? If the trade was between the 10th and 6th, maybe that could make some sense, but I still don't think it'll happen. The player in question, alone, would have a maximum value equivalent to a 5th or 6th round pick, meaning the 6th pick couldn't even be reached in exchange for the 10th. The point difference between the 6th and 10th pick is a second-rounder, so the suggestion implies this player would be worth a second-round pick in that context. That's certainly not feasible. I appreciate all the questions asked. If more arise, I'm available on social media to clarify your doubts about the team. Thanks to everyone for their attention. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. Your support helps us keep bringing you the latest updates on our Chicago Bears. And don't be shy. Drop your thoughts on the news in the comments below. The Chicago Bears are no strangers to drama, but recent rumors surrounding wide receiver DJ Moore have taken things to a whole new level. After a stellar performance during the 2024 season, in which Moore finished with 98 receptions for 966 yards and 6 touchdowns, the 27-year-old receiver seems to have hit a breaking point. Despite his undeniable talent and significant contract extension, Moore has expressed dissatisfaction with his role on the team, citing a growing sense of being undervalued. The question now looms, is his time in Chicago coming to an end? Moore, who was traded to the Bears in March 2023, seemed to be a perfect fit after signing a massive 4-year, $110 million contract in 2024. However, despite his impressive stats and contributions on the field, sources close to the player reveal that Moore feels he has not received the recognition he deserves within the organization. This has sparked heated discussions both inside and outside the Bears locker room. Moore's frustration appears to be rooted in the lack of appreciation from management, especially after the Bears signed other high-profile players, such as defensive end Shaquan Montez Sweat, to lucrative deals. The tension between Moore and the Bears has escalated, and insiders suggest that Moore's unhappiness with his situation may lead to a trade request in the near future. While the team has remained publicly supportive, the wide receiver's growing frustration with his perceived lack of value could soon translate into action. The Bears' coaching staff, led by Matt Eberflus, faces the difficult task of mending this rift if they hope to retain one of their brightest defensive stars. Moore, known for his elite playmaking ability, is well aware of his worth, and his patience may be wearing thin. As the 2025 season approaches, all eyes will be on Moore to see if his frustrations spill over into a formal trade demand. His value to any team seeking a dynamic, game-changing wide receiver is undeniable, and several franchises are rumored to be eyeing him. Should the Bears fail to address his concerns, they risk losing a player who has consistently been one of their top performers, a player who has made his mark not only in Chicago, but across the league. The next few weeks could be crucial in determining Moore's future with the Bears. With his contract extension locked in for the next few years, the team is under pressure to either meet his expectations or prepare for the possibility of a high-profile departure. DJ Moore's story in Chicago may not be over, but the outcome now rests in the hands of both the player and the team's front office. Can they find common ground, or is a change of scenery on the horizon? That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to stay updated with exclusive news about our Chicago Bears, be sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that like button. We can't wait to hear your thoughts in the comments. See you in the next video.